Hey everyone, I have a quick question for you. How consistent are you in your beliefs? When times get hard, there was times that were easier in life and you said, if anything changes, this one thing I will stick to and I will not change my mind. So how consistent were you when that hard time came? Did you change? Did you follow the flock? Or did you stick to your own? How consistent are you and how committed are you to what you believe in? I wanted to speak to you about a few topics that happened over the last, let's say, 5 years. We're all familiar with them. COVID, the war in Ukraine, the recession, the ongoing recession that's happening right now. We're familiar with all these things. And before any of these things happened, we were telling ourselves, if this happens, I'm going to do this. If this happens, I won't let anybody tell me what to do. We always said, I trust God. I trust myself. I trust my family. I trust the Constitution. And we all had certain beliefs, certain feelings, certain things that we thought and we believed we were grounded in. And then we were tested. Of course, 2019, 2020 happened. COVID came around, and we all remember the news. We remembered the scare tactics. We remembered 2 weeks to stop the spread. We had to stay locked into our homes. And what did we personally believe? How did we act? Did we stick to our beliefs? I, myself, for example, remember the time clearly, as we all do. And I remember when we saw the videos and the news coming in from China with people dying in the streets, with the lockdowns, no rooms in the hospitals. And the media, the fear that the media put into us was just something, like I said, we were tested. And a lot of us, especially the first 2 weeks, like in any disaster or in anything that is unforeseen happens, a lot of us kind of followed the mob, right? And I remember for myself when I heard 2 weeks to stop the spread, we didn't know what was going to happen. We all had a fear that was a mob mentality type of fear. And we all, most of us, including myself, locked ourselves in our homes. I remember, even being scared, to step out and, what's the government going to say? What's this? Can we step out? Can we meet friends and family? We feared a virus, but I don't think we feared a virus as much as we feared the authorities. We thought, you know what? They're going to tell us what to do. They know what's best for us. We're going to listen. Of course, in the beginning, most of us did that. But then there are a few changes that happened, right? We remember this was about March, April, May of the first year of COVID. Remember the hospitals running out of PPE and masks. And I myself was against wearing masks. But here's where the catch comes in. I'm against doing certain things for myself, but I'm not for pushing that person to do what I believe, even though I think I know what's better. A lot of us think that, I know what's better for him. I know better, for this person or that person. But that's not how the world works. Even though we know what's better, we don't force our opinions and we don't force people to act based on our opinions and our thoughts. So I would say that I have almost a libertarian kind of view on forcing my opinions on someone else. Even if we know we think we know what's better for that person, do we have a right to force them? I myself am a Christian. I believe that everybody should follow Christ. I believe that is the way, the truth, and the life. And I believe everybody should follow Jesus, right? And I would want to go out and if I had the right, force everybody to be a Christian. But of course, I can't do that. Why? Because we see, even in Scripture, we see Jesus speaking. And I mostly see that example. So I myself, I'm a Christian. I'm a conservative. I believe those are the right views and beliefs to structure a family, to run government, to have a prosperous life. But at the same time, I don't see Scripture forcing someone to believe like we believe, no matter how much we would want that. Let's bring up some Scripture. Let's see here. So I wanted to bring up Matthew 19. It's a story that we all know of, the rich young man who came to Jesus. It says, Matthew 19, verse 16, "And behold, a man came up to him, saying, 'Teacher, what good deed must I do to have eternal life?' And he said to him, 'Why do you ask me about what is good? There is only one who is good. If you enter life, keep the commandments.' And he said to him, 'Which ones?' And Jesus said, 'You shall not murder, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness, honor your father and mother, and you will love your neighbor as yourself.' The young man said to him, 'All these I have kept. What do I still lack?' And here we see, Jesus says, 'If you would be perfect, go and sell what you possess and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven, and come follow me.' When the young man heard this, he went away sorrowful, for he had great possessions. And Jesus said to his disciple, 'Truly I say unto you, only with difficulty will a rich person enter the kingdom of heaven. Again, I tell you, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter the kingdom of God.'" So what do we see here, right? Jesus knows what's best for this man, young ruler, right? And we think we know what's best for someone, right? We may know, but Jesus doesn't just think he knows. He is God. He knows what is best for this man. He knows that what he asks of this man is best for himself, on earth here, spiritually, as a whole, that is what's best for him to do, right? Jesus wants him to do this one thing that he asked, right? And a lot of people look at the story and they see a rich young man, walking away from Christ. We can all see that, right? He just, because of his riches, because of everything he has on this earth, he can't give it up. He's attached to it, and he walks away. That's one part of the story, right? But the other part of the story here I see is Jesus, even though he is God, he knows 101% what is best for any of us. But God himself holds back. We don't see him grab him by the hand. We don't see him tackle him. We don't see him pull him. We see that Jesus lets this man walk away. God himself in the flesh, wanting the best for this man, telling him what is the best for this man. And then this man just walks away. Jesus doesn't grab him, doesn't pull him, even though that is the best thing to do. He just lets him. Sadly, for the man, he is let go. And that is what I believe has to happen in our personal lives, in government. We have to learn to be consistent in our beliefs and to be able to walk away or let someone walk away. I know we care, we love him, but we see Jesus doing it, and we should follow in his example. I wanted to show an example of people living in mob mentality and not being able to let go, to let people walk away, to let people do their own things. Yeah, we think we know better, but do we really? Jesus knew better. We didn't think so. He knew better than this young man, but he still let him walk away. So I wanted to bring up a video here. This is COVID-19 mask timeline and wanted to see how we reacted to this, how we acted. Did we push? Did we pull? Did we care about ourselves? Did we care about others? What was the best thing to do? And I'll start the video. It's a timeline of how people acted. Well, I guess I would say it's a timeline of events, and we would have to judge how we acted in each step of this timeline. Let's play this video.
I don't think people should be frightened. I mean, the risk right now, today, currently, is really relatively low for the American public.
And it really does displease me to find people going out. There's no role for these masks in the community.
So we see here from the CDC and Fauci, he was trying to downplay what was going on here. This is February, early months. You know, was the time period of 2 weeks to stop the spread, and then 4 weeks, and then another 2 weeks, and another 8 weeks, and so forth. You know, we all know what happened here. And it says, main focus for preventing coronavirus spread should be hand hygiene, not face masks. So these are the people, these are the mainstream news. This looks like, MSNBC, NBC, one of them here. And it says, they were the ones saying the main focus should be not wearing the face masks. I remember that time, and I was against wearing it. Most of my family, everybody I know, was against wearing it. But one thing I remember was nurses in New York City wanting to wear masks, and they saying, don't do it. The main focus should be not face masks, but hand hygiene. And I remember nurses that were fired for wanting or disciplined for wanting to wear these masks. And here is where my point or question comes in. Am I or are you consistent in what we ask ourselves or what we ask someone else to do? Here they say, don't wear masks. But they fired people who wanted to wear them, which I didn't want to wear them, but I said, hey, if he wants to wear them, why stop him? Let's continue. Seriously, people, stop buying masks. Surgeon General, stop buying masks. Health officials beg Americans to stop.
At this moment, there is no need to change anything that you're doing on a day-by-day basis. Right now, the risk is still low.
3 reasons not to wear them. John Hopkins.
Government officials say face masks are not necessary if you are healthy.
Wearing this as a healthy person will not protect you.
And stay safe by washing your hands, by covering your cough, by staying home if you're sick. Masks do not work for the general public and preventing them from getting
U.S.
coronavirus.
Surgeon General says masks do not work for the public.
Masks.
You're sure of it? Because people are listening really closely to this.
Right now, people should not be walking.
Remember this when you see the gaslighting start happening later on in the video.
Protect our healthcare workforce.
How it wasn't about health,
it is imperative
but it was about
have the equipment that is
telling
needed.
us what to do, controlling us.
For everyday New Yorkers, we don't recommend the use of surgical masks.
We don't generally recommend the wearing of masks in public by otherwise well individuals because it has not been up to now associated with any particular benefit.
A lot of discussion around face coverings, what they are, what they're not. They are not a call.
So this is
to get
February,
folks
March, April.
to find N95 masks or surgical masks and pull them away or compete against our first responders.
And this is when they reverse course, right? So they tell us for 2, 3, 4 months, and this is not just the government. This is general public. This is our neighbors. This is friends. You know, many people saying, don't wear a mask, don't wear a mask, don't wear a mask. And I remember being on the don't wear a mask crowd, right? I say, what's the point, right? There, we've seen the studies, right? The size of the virus. We've seen, the space in the mask. I'm not a doctor, but we were all watching. We all saw what was going on, and we saw the so-called experts say, February to April, don't wear a mask. Nurses fired for trying to, have them in the corridors of the hospitals. Medical workers. And the experts say, don't wear it. Now April starts. CDC reverses course here.
First of all, I want people to understand that the CDC, the World Health Organization, my office, and most public health and health organizations and professionals originally recommended against the general public wearing masks. That we now know from recent studies that a significant portion of individuals with coronavirus lack symptoms. They're what we call asymptomatic. And that even those who eventually become pre-symptomatic, meaning that they will develop symptoms in the future, can transmit the virus to others before they show symptoms. In light of this new evidence, CDC recommends and the task force recommends wearing cloth face coverings in public settings where other social distancing measures are difficult to maintain.
This is the fear that started. This is when the shame started, right? I know what's best for you. So we see there, when the fear started, right? It says millions of people wear a mask, do this, do that, right? Say one thing, turn, do a 180, now saying, we told you, wear masks. And I remember at the same time, when they first said, don't wear masks, and the nurses wanted to wear it, I say, I believe you shouldn't, right? But who am I to tell that nurse not to wear it? I'm not in their position, and I'm not in their shoes. I don't know their health. I don't know anything about them. It's not my job to force them. Which these people, of course, thought they were above God, I guess. They thought they had a right to force people. And then we see that when April started, they started to gaslight us, right? April, May, June, July, and so forth, the next few years, the gaslighting started. It said, we never said wear a mask, not to wear a mask. We always said wear a mask, right? We remember the times when they created the COVID shot, right? And we'll bring up a video that shows this as well. All right, so let's start this video here. Now, remember when they said everybody has to take the vaccines, everybody has, to help their neighbors stop the spread. And we had a small group of people who stood against that, saying, hey, we already had the virus, we have immunity. Why force us to take an experimental vaccine that we don't know anything about, right? You don't know anything about. You say you do. You say you're the experts, but we saw the video with the masks, right? Don't wear a mask, now wear masks. And they're like, well, new evidence came that says we have to wear a mask. Well, no, you don't need that much new evidence. We have hundreds of years of medical training that shows with certain viruses, wear a mask or don't wear a mask. We know the science already, right? We've all studied it. We don't need to be gaslit for political reasons or for whatever reasons or control reasons that you may have. So we see that they set a standard, right? They set precedent, and they said, they showed that we want to control these people, right? We can tell them not to, then we'll tell them to do, but we have the power to tell them. Right, and let's watch a video. This is Rand Paul in the Senate with Mr. Fauci. And we'll see again gaslighting, inconsistency, and control that these people want over us. Let's pull up the video here.
But she's had the flu for 14 days. Should she get a flu shot?
Well, no. If she got the flu for 14 days, she's as protected as anybody can be, because the best vaccination is to get infected yourself.
And
So
she should not get it?
if she really has the flu,
If she
she
really has the
definitely
flu,
doesn't need a flu vaccine.
definitely doesn't need a
If
vaccine.
she really has the flu.
She should not get it again
No,
this
she
year?
doesn't need it, because it's the most
all said
potent
that.
vaccination is getting infected yourself.
This is an ongoing question, and we've had ever-evolving opinions
We
from
see
you,
it's
Dr.
September
Fauci.
14th of 2022.
Currently, antibody
This is already 2 years into the pandemic.
80% of children, approximately 80% of children, have had COVID, and yet there are no guidelines coming from you or anybody in the government to take into account their naturally acquired immunity. You seemed quite certain of yourself in 2004, but in 2022, there's a lot.
And I remember I'm still am a truck driver, and I was a truck driver during this time period, the forced masks and forced vaccines. And we all knew from established science, right, for the last 100 years and plus of medical history, that if you had this virus, you don't need a vaccine, because those antibodies that you have from the virus are better than any vaccine in most cases, right? And we see Fauci saying, if you had it, there's no reason to get the vaccine. But let's continue the video.
A lot less certainty. One of the things that we also know after looking at this for 2 to 3 years is that the mortality from COVID is very similar, if not less, than influenza. So when we look at this, we wonder, why you seem to really embrace basic immunology back in 2004 and why you seem to reject it now.
Well, I don't reject basic immunology, Senator, and I have never denied that there is importance of the protection following infection. However, as we have said many times, and has been validated by the authorization by the FDA through their committee and the recommendation by the CDC through their committee, that a vaccination following infection gives an added extra boost. And that film that you showed is really taken out of context. I believe that was when someone called in who had had a reaction to a vaccine and asked me through a telephone in the interview if they should get vaccinated again. So it was in the context of someone who had a reaction. And as a matter of fact, Reuters.
So see, the gaslighting starts here and many other videos, right? Oh, you have to get this vaccine. You have to wear this mask. We didn't say that, past exposure to this virus will protect you and give you immunity. You need this extra step, right? And then we start thinking, was it about the virus, or was it about control? Let's keep watching.
Reuters fact check looked at that and said Fauci's 2004 comments do not contradict his pandemic stance.
Actually, words don't lie. If you look at the words behind me, we can go over them a little bit at a time. She doesn't need it because the most potent vaccination is getting infected yourself.
Infected yourself. It is true. So, and here he says, you heard him. It is true. It is true, right? So if it is true, I'm a truck driver, and I was a truck driver, right? I was one of those essential workers, like the people in the medical field, the nurses and the doctors and the frontline workers in stores. And a lot of us frontline service workers, whether it's trucking and doctors and nurses and store workers and food workers, a lot of us, the majority of us, had natural immunity. Because look what they say here. She doesn't need it because it's the most potent vaccination is getting infected yourself. And then he says, oh, but we need an extra boost. Why? If I have the most potent vaccination, which was the virus itself, what is it about then? Let's continue.
Senator, it is a very potent way to protect.
So when you're trying to tell us that kids need a third or a fourth vaccine, are you including the variability or the variable of previous infection in the studies? No, you're not. Because when you have approved vaccines in recent times, and the committees that have approved it for children don't report anything on hospitalization or death or transmission. They only report that if you give them the jab, they'll make antibodies. And you can give kids hundreds of jabs and they'll make antibodies every time, but that does not prove efficacy. So what you're doing is denying the very fundamental premise of immunology that previous infection does provide some sort of immunity. It's not in any of your studies. Almost none of your studies from the CDC or from the government have the variable of whether or not you've been previously infected. So let's look at adults. I've had 3 infections. Should I get a 4th one? If you're going to measure whether I get a 4th one, you need a category that has a 4th one in it, and you need one that has nothing in it, no vaccine or the 4th vaccine.
And they always told us, trust the science. And the question came back to, who is the science, right? Trust the science. Which science? Your science, right? The one that says, don't wear a mask, then wear a mask. The one that says, the most potent form of vaccination is being immune because you had the virus already. Let's keep watching
But
this.
you also need to know whether they've been infected. If you ignore whether they've been infected, you're ignoring a vaccine, basically. So you're ignoring a variable. So what you're giving us is this, you decry, and people decry vaccine hesitancy. It's coming from the gobbledygook that you give us.
They caused
You're not paying
the
attention
so-called
to the science.
vaccine hesitancy.
The very basic science is that previous infection provides a level of immunity. If you ignore that in your studies, if you don't present that in your committees, you're not being truthful or honest with us.
Senator, if I might respond, I have never, ever denied fundamental immunology. In fact, I wrote the chapter in the textbook of medicine
Is it any
on
of the,
fundamental
any of the guidelines?
immunology.
Any of the guidelines for vaccines? Do any of the guidelines for vaccines from the government include previous infection as something to base
didn't.
your decision making?
We know
on
the
with
history. We won't be
vaccines?
gaslit.
Do any of the guidelines involve previous infection? That's why
We know
you're
the jobs
ignoring
lost,
previous
the
infection, because it
livelihoods
doesn't
lost.
involve any of the guidelines. And furthermore, we've been asking you, and you refuse to answer, whether anybody on the vaccine committees gets royalties from the pharmaceutical companies. I asked you last time, and what was your response? We don't have to tell you.
Right.
We've demanded them through Freedom of Information Act, and what have you said? We're not going to tell you. But I tell you this, when we get in charge, we're going to change the rules, and you will have to divulge where you get your royalties from what companies, and if anybody in the committee has a conflict of interest, we're going to learn about it. I promise you that.
Mr. Chair, can I respond to that, please?
May.
Okay, there are 2 aspects for what you said. You keep saying you approve, you do this, you do that. The committees that give the approval.
And here you'll see him deflecting, right? You keep saying you approve, you do this, you do that. And when Rand Paul was talking about it, when Senator Rand Paul was speaking about it, he says Fauci. He didn't mean Fauci. But as a whole, right, him and myself and many others meant the medical industry as a whole said this, right? And now he's trying to deflect and say, I didn't, it was this person, the CDC. But let's continue watching.
Are FDA through their advisory committee. The committees that recommend are CDC through their advisory committee. And you keep saying, I'm the one that's approving a vaccine based on certain data. So I don't really understand, with all due respect, Senator.
You're the one that said you would not reveal what companies gave you royalties or what company gave the other scientists royalties.
Gotta move
That's
on.
what you told the committee.
Senator Paul,
Sir,
you gotta move on.
Could I please answer that?
Briefly,
You
yes.
keep asking committees. They're not my committees. They're the VRPAC committee for the FDA.
And this is what they do, is they deflect, right? And they start with, wasn't me, wasn't this, wasn't that, right? We can pull up a lot of videos. We can search the early months and years of COVID. We can see who said what, but we mostly are speaking as a whole. what were the consequences of people who thought they knew better for someone else, right? Let's let him finish.
For the CDC. So I don't have any idea what goes on.
And they won't reveal, as well as you won't reveal.
Okay,
what
we're gonna move on. We're over time, Senator Paul. You're
all right. So the thing here is the gaslighting. I don't know how they don't see it, right? So we remember what happened, right? I remember being on the road thinking, when they created this so-called vaccine, right? I knew this was my stand. I knew I didn't want to take it, right? But I'm a father, right? I'm a husband. I'm a provider. And my family depends on me, right, to provide. And being a CDL holder, or so-called professional driver, right, in the U.S., we were watching the news, right? We were watching the medical industry. I have family members who were in the medical industry. Some still are in the medical industry, but I have this young man, family man. He's a close family member and friend, right? Working in the hospitals. And the mandate came that said, you must take this vaccine or else you will lose your livelihood. You will not feed your family. And many people lost their jobs. You know, we know this cousin, this friend, this family member of mine with children, with a wife, with bills and mortgage to pay, because somebody like Mr. Fauci thought he knew better, and many of our citizens in the U.S. who think they know better forced their neighbor to lose their job, lose their livelihood, not be able to pay for the food to place on their children's tables. And then we have gaslighting from Mr. Fauci. We have gaslighting from friends, from neighbors, saying, this never happened, we never said this. No, you did, because people lost their livelihoods, people lost the bread that they had to put on their children's tables. I remember when the time came closer and closer and closer to CDL drivers like myself having to decide whether they will take the vaccine or not. And the point is not whether the vaccine is required, not required. I made a decision that says, no, it's not required. I'm naturally immune. I'm a truck driver. I traveled the U.S. for a year or two until the vaccine was created. I've had that immunity, right, natural immunity over and over and over until, the vaccine was created. And he says, Mr. Fauci says, the most potent form of vaccination is having the virus itself. I had that, but I was a truck driver, and we were watching. We were the essential transportation for food, the toilet paper everybody so wanted so badly. We were the essential drivers who provided the transportation of the goods. So they had a fear of forcing us, right? Because you force the truck drivers stopped driving, no more toilet paper, no more food, no more water. So it was a little harder to force us, but they did force the medical workers, factory workers. I remember, when it came to the trucking industry, the first company that was first, and one of the first companies that was forcing the vaccine was Tyson Foods. And I remember thinking, we can't take loads there. I mean, we don't have the vaccine, the card, or whatever. I don't know how they force people to prove their vaccination status. But they forced people under the threat of losing their livelihood. They thought they knew better. Fauci thought he knew better. The CDC thought they knew better. But they didn't. They thought they did. And the question is, are we consistent in our beliefs, right? Do we have a right to force someone because we think we know better? And my answer is no. No, we don't. And we can't fall for these fear tactics, right? No matter if it's a war, if it's a vaccine, if things happen, right? And we can't fault people for the beginning of COVID. For us, for many of us, 2019, 2020 hit us out of nowhere, unexpectedly. And we did not know how to react to overreach from government, from friends, from families, from companies. We were almost like deer stuck in headlights. At least I know I was in that status, right? In the first few months or first month or two of COVID. But then when you get hit by any tragedy, right? When you get hit by it, you got to step away from those headlights that are coming at you, or you're going to be killed, right? You step away from those headlights because then you become roadkill. And I'm sad to say that it took me a month or two to step away, right? I was stunned, those headlights in my eyes. But it did take me a month or two, but I walked away. And this is where we figured what's going on, right? It's almost like mass hypnotism, right? Everybody's scared. Everybody's fearful. Why? Because what's my neighbor going to say? What's the government going to say? What are the cops going to say? What's my job going to say? I don't want to do this, but I have to. I have to feed my family. They say, well, no, we never forced anybody. It was just a suggestion. Well, it was not a suggestion, right? It was forced. It was, you don't do this, you lose your job. Well, I'm worried about my kids, feeding and putting food at the table. That's coercion, right? How am I making that decision myself if I'm coerced, if I'm forced into doing something I don't want to do? And this all came out of fear, right? Out of our friends, our family, our neighbors, putting pressure, using pressure as a fear tactic. And at what point did our neighbors, did our friends and family, did I step back and say, hold on, what am I doing? We got to stop this. This is going crazy. Where do we go back and say, we have to be consistent in our beliefs? Some people stepped in a few weeks. I wish I was one of them, but first week or two, no. I remember having friends over about a month and a half in, doing barbecue on the back porch, hiding our cars behind our house, thinking, if the government sees us, what's going to happen? Mr. Cuomo is going to do this or that, and the cops. It's like, since when do we give the power to authorities to lock us and make us prisoners in our own homes, to take our livelihoods from us? And in that moment, the first month or two, we were there with headlights in our face. We were stunned. We didn't know what to do. A lot of us, majority of us. There were some that didn't step into the roadway, didn't freeze in the headlights. They walked away. But a majority of us let them do what they wanted to do. And a lot of people got hurt by it. So let's see here. Again, the point here is not COVID. It's not wars. It's about consistency, right? It's about, what do I believe? Do I step back, right? So the question, what I learned during COVID and during the last 3, 4, and 5 crazy years, right, is, do I step back from the roadway when the headlights are coming at me, or do I freeze? The first time, sadly, in the beginning, first few weeks, I froze. But then time passes and teaches you, and you learn to step away from those headlights, right? Because if you don't, that's it for you, right? And the question is, did we learn, to stay consistent no matter what's coming at us, right? Are we consistent with the standard that we set for ourselves before that thing that happened right now, right, or is going to happen in the future? The past is the past. It's something that we have to learn from. And it says, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me, right? Most of us learned from the first experience in COVID. And, we did some things wrong, but most of us, whether it's the first week, first month, second month, we looked at the facts, and then, like myself, I said, you know what? Let people do what they need to do, and it's not my job to force my opinion on someone else. I don't want to wear a mask, but the nurses wanted to. Said if they want to, it's their body, their livelihoods. Let them do what they want to do. It doesn't affect me. When the COVID happened, the vaccine happened, same thing. I don't want to do it, but you do you, right? And here's another thing, right? I'm going to pull up another video that brings up the same topic of consistency, right? What do we believe? If those headlights are coming at us, do we step away? Did we learn to step away? Or are we still going to stand in the roadway and get hit by that car? Those headlights are coming at us, right? And this is next video I'm going to pull up is a subject that is very close to many of us, right? I'm a U.S. citizen. My children were born here. They're U.S. citizens. But I was born in the Ukraine. And we all know what happened the last 2 years with the Ukraine war, right? And what are our thoughts or beliefs? What were they before the war happened? What were they a year before? What were they 2 years before? What were they 5 to 10 years before? What were our thoughts and feelings when it happened, especially those of us who were most closely affected? And how did they change or transition through the last 2 years? And when the wars first happened, it was same situation again. I was born there. I have feelings. I have friends and family. I'm affected. And those headlights were coming right? But thankfully, I learned from the first scenario, right? The COVID scenario, 19 and 20. And I saw those headlights, those emotions hit, those feelings came. But right away, I said, you know what? Step out of the roadway. Those headlights are coming again, right? The fear is going to come. The pressure is going to come. How are you going to react? So let's bring up a video. This was the night before the invasion happened in Ukraine.
And peace building affairs to participate in.
Let's bring it up here.
Совет Безопасности приступит к рассмотрению пункта 2 повестки дня. Я хотел бы приветствовать его превосходительство генерального секретаря Антонио Гутерреша и предоставить ему слово.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, Excellencies, I want to reaffirm what I expressed this morning in the meeting of the General Assembly. But of course, it wouldn't make any sense to bother you reading again the same text that I'm sure you are all aware of. In between, during the day, a number of events took place.
And this is the question
with your permission, Mr. President,
how did you feel?
I would like
what
to
were
ask
your
Ms.
beliefs?
Rosemary DiCarlo
How did you act?
to be
Did they
able
change?
to brief you on those events. But simultaneously, the day was full of rumors and indications that an offensive against the Ukraine was imminent. In the recent past, there were several situations.
All right, so we'll pause this video. Now, most of us who are, even slightly interested in world events, in politics or whatever is, happening in this world, we remember this night before video, right, of UN Security Council. We remember the feelings we had is like, what's going on in this world? Here we go again, another war, another virus, all that. We remember all that. We remember how it felt, especially those of us who were born in that country, right? So my country is the United States of America. I'm a citizen here. My children were born here. This is my home. But I was born in the Ukraine, and I have family still there. And we remember the feelings, right, of, the rumors of the wars that were going to happen. And then we remember the next couple of days. We remember how we felt. And again, there was that car that was coming at us with headlights in the middle of the night. It was blinding us. And that was the moment that it was time to step back and think rationally, right? So even though I was born in the Ukraine, I remember as a U.S. citizen, right, America being my home, I remember thinking when the Afghanistan war happened, I remember the Iraq war, and I remember my thoughts, my feelings, and beliefs of the United States being involved in these wars, right, in these foreign wars. I said to myself, we don't need our men and boys, right? We don't need our money and our tax dollars going to these foreign wars. We don't need to be a police state that polices other states. We don't need to, spend all this money, trillions of dollars that we don't have and go into debt for all these wars. Now, I wasn't born in Iraq. I was separated from what was happening there. I wasn't born in Afghanistan. I was separated from what was happening there. And my belief then was, we don't need to be involved as a country, right? I'm not speaking on a personal level, on a company level, individuals, but as a country, we don't need to be involved in Iraq. We don't need to be involved in Afghanistan. And then that was precedent that I set for myself, right? I said, we don't need our tax dollars and our men, especially me being from an Anabaptist background, right? Being from a pacifist background, I don't believe as Christians, that I would want to take up arms and kill other people, especially for these governments, and these rich men and these evil men who are in control, who start these wars out of evil and greed. And then young American men have to lose their lives and our money has to go somewhere that doesn't involve us, whether it's Iraq or Afghanistan. And because I'm separated, I wasn't a deer in the headlights. I could clearly think and say, no, we shouldn't have our money go there. Now here comes, the night before the Ukraine war and then the days after, and thinking to myself, I feel bad for the people who are dying. This is not right. How should I react? Being that I was born there and being that I have family there, the feelings were much, much stronger than the Iraq or the Afghanistan or any other war that the U.S. was involved in. Now, I set myself precedent in saying, no, we shouldn't have our men fighting there. We shouldn't have our money going to these foreign wars. We shouldn't go into debt. We have much bigger problems at home. Which home? My home, the United States of America. Now, when it affected the place that I was born, where I have family there, I had to ask myself, it goes back to the question again, am I consistent with my beliefs? How do I want my country to react in this scenario? It's hitting a lot closer to home, right? And if I am to be consistent with what I believe, I said, no, none of our tax dollars or our men should go die and fight in Iraq or Afghanistan or any other wars. We shouldn't police other countries. If I'm to be consistent, I have to hold the same standard when it affects the country that I was born in. Because my home is not the Ukraine. I have sympathy. I feel, for the people in the Ukraine. And on a personal level, my wife and I and family members, we spent time and money sending donations, helping, right, the people in need. And I remember friends and family. I remember my employers helping the people in need. And that's all well and good and nothing against that, because on a personal level, we have a right? It's the country I was born in. I want to help those people who are suffering, and that's what we did. But the question is not on a personal level. It was, what should our country do? right? And what were my beliefs on what our country should do before I was personally affected? What were my beliefs then? My beliefs were, no, we shouldn't police and we shouldn't start wars in Iraq. We shouldn't do it in Afghanistan. We shouldn't have done it in many, whether it was Vietnam or many other wars. We can't afford it. Our debt, right now, the interest of our debt is higher than our military spending. We can't afford this anymore, even though our military spending is astronomical, policing the whole world. And if I was going to be consistent, I had to ask myself, how am I going to react now that the country and the people that I love and the country I was born is being attacked, is in a war, right? And if I am consistent, I will say, no, my home is the United States of America. We don't need to send our money there. We don't need our boys to die there. We don't need our men to die there. I have sympathy for the people there, but consistency, having consistency in beliefs means I have to step away from those headlights and ask those hard questions and be consistent and answer in a consistent way. Because if I didn't want our money, our tax dollars, and our men to go die in Iraq and Afghanistan, I should have the same beliefs when it affects me closer to home, right? When it affects me more personally. And the question is, whether it was COVID, whether it's this war, or as a Christian, we see the war that happened in Israel. We see what happened, with Gaza, with Hamas attacking innocent people. And my belief, again, is that Israel is a chosen nation. They are a people of God, and they will persevere till the end. It is a miracle that Israel was destroyed in the first century, and then for 2,000 years almost, they were not a country anymore. And then almost 2,000 years after the nation didn't exist, 2,000 years later, it came back. To me, reading the Bible and reading Bible prophecy, it says that Israel is a nation chosen by God. God has a plan for Israel, and God will take his plan to the end, right? But the question is not about Israel, whether it has a right to defend itself or not. That's not the question. The question is, I'm a citizen of these United States, and am I consistent in my beliefs? Ukraine is a lot closer to me than Israel. Israel, because of my faith, is closer to me than Iraq or Afghanistan or Vietnam or any other wars. But if I'm consistent, we should say we shouldn't have our tax dollars and our men going to die in foreign wars, whether it's Israel, whether it's the Ukraine, which I was born in. We shouldn't stand for that. If we're consistent in what we believe, and if we held that opinion before the wars that affected us personally, we have to stand the ground that we set and the foundation that we set and believe the same beliefs and follow it through, even when it touches close to home. Did we do that? A lot of us did, and a lot of us didn't. And that's the question we have to ask ourselves. So here's a video that shows how close to home this war really hits, right? How close to home does it really come? This is, let me play it up here.
No one was killed or wounded. Also overnight, Russian drones launched from the Sea of Azov targeted the port of Izmail, as you mentioned. That's on the Danube River, right on the border with NATO country Romania. This is just the latest in a series of strikes to hit Ukraine's port infrastructure since Moscow pulled out of the Black Sea grain deal back in mid-July. And Ukraine's military said those drones were Iranian Shahed drones. They were all taken down, but the
This
strike
is a
did damage a
port
grain
where I
silo
have
and
one of my
nearby
first
buildings, but
memories in a
continued back
picture
and
with the
forth
family
across
taking.
the border.
Yeah, it certainly seems like Russia.
So this is a video here that we saw, and it shows a port in Izmail, Ukraine, It was only minutes away from the village in the city that I was born in. And it shows how close, to home this really hits, right? Let me pull up a picture here that shows this. So this right here is a picture. I was about 5 or 6 years old. My sister and my parents. And this is the same port that you saw in the previous video that I just played. It shows where I grew up, shows where I have friends and family, and it shows how personal, this situation is, right? And the question came in, am I consistent, right? So when this war hit, I looked at this situation, right? I had to step back and ask, am I consistent? When it was Iraq and Afghanistan, I said we should stay out of it. Our military should stay out of it. America first, right? But you look at this picture here, and it shows, parents, myself, sister, in the same port that was attacked in the previous video. I have sympathy for the people. I feel bad for the people on the personal level. We did help, and I believe we should still help. But on a national level, America should not be a state that polices other states. We don't have the funds for it anymore. And this is my home. The United States is my home. It's my children's home. And this home comes first. I have sympathies for the Iraqis. I have sympathies for the people of Afghanistan. I have sympathy for the people in Israel. I want to help on a personal level. I have sympathy, and I want to help the people who are suffering in Ukraine on a personal level. But on a national level, am I consistent? How did I react to countries that were not as close and attached to me, and how am I reacting now? And am I consistent with my beliefs? How do I react? And this is the question I've had in the beginning. Whether it's COVID, whether it's a war, how do you act? Do you change your opinion? Are you blown by the wind? Or do you stand firm and say, no, I'm going to step away from the headlights, and I'm going to see clearly, and I'm going to act clearly. I am not going to be gaslit. I will not react out of fear. I will think rationally, and I will act rationally. Let's stop being inconsistent. Let's stop being manipulated by media sources. Let's start thinking rationally. Let's start thinking consistently and stick to what we believe, even when it hits closest to home, as in this picture right here we see. So that is the question. Am I and are you consistent in your beliefs even when it hits close to home? How did you act when it affected a stranger, and how are you acting when it's affecting you? And is it the same consistent belief? If it is, kudos to you. But if it's not, step away from the headlights and check what you believe and act according to your beliefs. You may not agree with me. We may not agree together, but we can agree to disagree. That we have to be consistent with what we believe and not act irrational on emotion. Now, I'd like to thank you for watching our first video here, and I'm hoping to make many more future videos. If you would like to like, comment, and subscribe on this video, this will help out greatly in the future. And thank you very much for your time, and we'll see you on the next one.